Hello students, we are dealing with the first chapter, that is introduction from your microeconomics part, and in today's video lesson I will discuss about the branches of economics. Okay. As I mentioned in the previous video lesson as well, that there are two branches, microeconomics and macroeconomics. So, in this video lesson we will see that the differences between these two branches of economics, and then we will see the interdependence between these two. Okay. So, let us start with the branches of economics. The branches of economics can be means there are two branches basically, one is microeconomics and macroeconomics. As I told you earlier that I have already discussed this slide in the last video lesson, where I told you, you need to remember that this in case of micro there is I which stands for individual, and in case of macro there is A which stands for aggregates. Okay. Now, let me define this microeconomics and macroeconomics under the section of microeconomics versus macroeconomics. See, the first column, in the first column, as you can see here, the basis is given. On the basis of these points we are differentiating between this microeconomics and macroeconomics, okay, or we will distinguish between we will find the differences between this micro and macroeconomics. First of all, we are having meaning. So, what is the definition or meaning of this microeconomics? Let me tell you, the microeconomics studies the problem of choice and scarcity at the individual level. As I said, I stands for individual. So, here in case of microeconomics, it deals with the individual persons or maybe individual firm, and like that, means it always the whatever the problem of choice and the scarcity, which we have already know from the previous video lessons as well, for which we are studying this economics actually. So, those scarcity or problem of choices should be at the individual level, then it comes under microeconomics. And if it is macroeconomics, then in case of macroeconomics studies, it studies the problem of the choice and scarcity from the perspective of the economy as a whole. Means here we are we have to consider the whole economy. No, we will not consider a single person or a single family or about a single farm or like that. Here we have to consider the whole economy. Now, what are the variables we under this study we are having? In case of microeconomics, it deals with microeconomic variables like consumers demand, producers supply, all this thing. Means here we will consider the individual or maybe market demand and all, and what is the supply of a farm and like that, or maybe cost and revenue of a farm like that. Whereas, in case of microeconomics, it deals with the macroeconomics, it deals with the macroeconomic variables like aggregate demand, aggregate supply, national income, GDP, like this type of variables we are calculating here, or we are dealing with this type of variables under the macroeconomics. Here aggregate demand means demand of all the products available, okay, all the goods and services by all the people actually. So, here we are not considering a individual consumer's demand or demand of a family or demand of a particular product like that. This is a aggregate demand. Similarly, aggregate supply we have to consider. Now, again, if we consider national income, again national income means what? The income of the total population, okay. So, here we need the aggregate variables. Now, if we consider the degree of aggregation actually in case of microeconomics or in case of macroeconomics, what is the degree of aggregation? See, in micro, as I said, it deals with the individual level or maybe the small level, okay. So, here the degree of aggregation is limited. Okay, means you can find out, means later on in the third chapter in the microeconomics part, you'll have demand, okay, where we will know about the individual demand, market demand. So market demand is what? Individual demand means how much you are demanding. Let me write it. Suppose there is a product X and there is person 1, 2 and 3. Person 1 demands, suppose, 2 units of X, okay. Person 2 demands 3 unit of X and person 3 demands, suppose, 1 unit of X, clear. So individual demand means this 2x, 3x, 1x differently, means 1 unit of x, 3 unit of x differently, okay. But if we consider the market demand, means in the market what is the demand of this commodity X, if there is only 3 consumers, suppose there is 3, means this 3, 1, 2 and 3. So we need to add all this 3. How much we will get? 6x, means 6 units of x, clear. So this is the market demand. Here as well we are considering only single item, or maybe we are aggregating the demand means which we usually done in the macroeconomics as well. But here in case of microeconomics, or in this case market demand, we are aggregating means the degree of this aggregation is small, means we are calculating for the 3 people or maybe more than 3, 10 people or 15 people, like that, not more than that. Means in case of macroeconomic variables, we are calculating the total population's demand as well as for the demand. It is not demand for the single commodity, here we consider the demand for all the commodities, okay. So there lies the difference. Just a minute. So in case of macroeconomics, the degree of aggregation is very high, but in case of microeconomics it is very low or limited, okay, very small or limited, you can say. Now let us see the scopes, okay. This microeconomics part covers several issues like demand, supply, then product pricing, factor pricing, economic welfare, consumption, then production, etc., etc., okay. But in case of macroeconomics, it covers several issues like distribution of income or like that, national income, employment, money, general price level, okay. These things we are dealing with. Now the significance. In case of this microeconomics, the significance is what? See, allocation of resources to individual units is the central issue of the concern. As I said, the microeconomics deals with at the individual level. So here the main thing or main important thing is that how to allocate the resources for the individual people, okay, that is the central problem or central issue. Whereas in case of macroeconomics, it provides mechanism to regulate the overall price level, okay, in the economy together with the determination of national income and employment, clear. There are certain limitations of this two microeconomics and macroeconomics branches, like in case of microeconomics, it is based on certain empirical or hypothetical assumptions, like in most of the microeconomics theory, actually we have to assume that there is full employment level, which is a vague one, means it is not always possible, okay. So in every economy there is a full employment situation or like that, it is not like that, but here in most of the theory we have to assume that. Whereas in case of macroeconomics, what is the limitation? It has been seen that has been found that what is true for the aggregate may not be true for the individuals too. Means maybe it is good for the mass or maximum number of people, okay, but it is not true for the individual person as well. Like if we consider the national income and all, okay, so once we find out the national income, it is the aggregate of income, okay, that may be very high, okay, compared to last year's national income. This year's national income suppose increased, but it does not mean the individual's income also increased. It might happen the some of the there is a few group of people those income has increased, and that is why the total national income has increased, okay. So here it is not true that if something is true for the mass, that should be true for the individual as well. So these are the differences between micro and macroeconomics. Let me move on to the interdependence part. So here see interdependence between micro and macroeconomics. Here B/W stands for between, okay. Both micro and macroeconomics are interdependent on each other, okay. How? Let us see how micro depends on macro. For that, let me give you one example of law of demand. What is law of demand? Again, in the third chapter of microeconomics we will be dealing with this, but still you also know that, see, if the price of any commodity, say for example X, commodity X decreased, you found the commodity X's price decreased. So what will happen? Your demand for the commodity, means in market, what will happen? Demand for that product, that is commodity X, will increase. But if there is another situation, suppose Px, that is price of X, increased, what will happen at that time? At that time demand for X will decrease. Okay. So law of demand says that if the price level, price of any commodity increased, considering the fact that other factors are constant, then demand for that commodity will decrease, and vice versa. That means if price of that commodity decreased, then demand will increase, okay. So this is a general law, okay, and this is a aggregate behavior of the individual, means everyone will do the same thing. So this everyone's behavior or the aggregate behavior shows from that actually we can derive the individual will also do the same. If the everyone, means all the whole population is doing that, then definitely the individual person will do the same thing, okay. So in this way we are deriving the law of demand. So here we can say from the aggregate facts we are getting the individual facts, okay. So micro depends on macro. Now how macro depends on micro? It is very easy, the example of national income. How we can calculate the national income? We need to know the income of the each and every individual of the country and for a year, and then we can add on the income of all the individuals, and what we will get? The national income. That means what? We need micro economics data actually, that is income of every single individual, means income of every individuals, and by adding those we can get the macro data, that is national income. Micro and macro activities can sometimes lead to some paradoxical result as well. That means here paradoxical result means, here let me give you one example, means sometimes which is true for the micro may not be true for the macro, or vice versa. Like let me give you one example, like if a person try to save some money from his or her income, that is good, because that savings he or she can use in the future, okay. So savings is good for individuals, okay. So we all start saving, that means myself also start savings, you, everyone, each and everyone. So at the micro level it is true, savings is good, but at a macro level it is not. Why? Because at a macro level what will happen? If everyone starts saving, then aggregate demand will fall. How you can save? You can save money by purchasing less or spending less, then only you can have some money and you can save that. So if everyone starts saving, that means the aggregate demand of the country will fall. So, that is also not desirable. So, maybe it is the savings is good for at the micro level, but it is not at the good at in the macro level. So, this is the paradox actually, this is called paradoxical result. Okay. So, this is all about the interdependence. Next day, in the next class, we will discuss about the next topic, that is the central problem of economics. For the time being, thank you students, and go through all these portions. Okay. Thank you.